Hello everyone, I am Tacit, and today I'm going to be going over the Gems of War event objectives for the Ice Cold event, in which the Kolfrysti is added to the game. So this week brings 1.5 billion events, is one of those kind of weeks. Not only do we have the start of the May event that's going to be going on for next 2 weeks, bringing in a new troop, a new pet, technically 2 new pets, as well as the spring armor if you didn't end up getting it the other year. But we also have a journey rework this week and a new Mythic this Friday, so quite a few things to go run down. First things first, we did end up getting the monthly calendar, and while we did go over this on stream twice, we have not covered it briefly in a video yet. But long story short, if you want the quick synopsis on it, we were having the May event over the next 2 weeks. The biggest thing happening the week after that is Vault Event Weekend. During one of these weeks, we're likely getting a patch, most likely this 14th, however, it could be any day this month, but is very likely to be sometime this month. We're getting the next PvP patch. And then near the end of the month, we're going to be getting a 2-week-long Whitehelm Kingdom Pass. So we'll be getting a Kingdom Pass for Whitehelm, which should be coinciding around the time when the season is ending. So we're getting a lot of Whitehelm troops all at once, which will definitely be able to 30-star the Whitehelm Kingdom with everything that's coming in. Or maybe not easily, but, you know, it'll be easier to. But anyways, that's the full rundown of everything we have going on this month. Before we go any further, there should be mention on the journey rework. So unfortunately, the journeys did not get any easier to end up doing difficulty-wise, nor level scaling-wise, so journey troops are still just as useless as they have been, and the difficulty curve is still the same. However, you now need to get 40,000 less points in order to get to all rewards, as well as slightly less points in order to get to stage 12. Which is the previous all rewards before they added the 4 extra tiers. So if you haven't been going for all rewards, this could make it a little bit more enticing to do so. Not only you need 40,000 less points, and if you're already going to stage 16, this will basically make it so you get effectively 1 day earlier as far as your full completion on Journey event. While difficulty is unchanged, it should make it a little bit more accessible to reach stage 12 as well as complete out everything. And they are still going to be doing potentially additional changes into the future, but this is what we ended up getting for now. Anyways, let's go and start getting into the troop. So, as far as the new troop, I have no clue how to say his name. You can stock up on green, blue arcanes. Really good to do so. A lot of really good troops that end up doing that, such as Beatrix, which I think we end up using on one of our teams this week for the cheaper team. Anyways, as far as this troop is concerned, it's okay. It drains up to 20 mana from an enemy and then creates freeze gems for every 2 mana drained. Freeze gems, of course, being blue gems that, when matched, will freeze a random enemy. This could, of course, backfire on your team. Luckily, he himself has immune to freeze, as well as many things he would generally synergize them with. However, this, of course, can backfire and not only give the enemy blue mana, but also freeze your entire team. But normally, it'll give you blue mana and freeze the entire enemy team. Most noteworthy things about this is he does feed back into himself with all that blue mana, and if you are casting this on something like a Mythic, you will generally be able to get the full 20 value. You might not be able to keep looping it, because obviously you'll run out of mana eventually on the opposing team. And the most he could ever create from this, of course, is 10 gems if you end up doing it on something that currently has 20 mana. Keep in mind, it's based on the current mana, not on their total possible mana. So if this guy was at like 7 out of 14, we would only get 3 gem spawn from that, as it would round down. And yeah, so you generally don't want to use on anything too low of a mana. Overall, very situational, not really something you'd bring out too often, but is something that throughout the week, based on the restriction, you might end up finding use out of. Also has a blue storm, which can help with anything that you need a blue storm for. For the most part, is pretty much going to be used for this week, and I don't really foresee it being used too much going forward. Just because mana drainers like this that we've already have a good handful of are just a lot, pretty inconsistent. Not to mention simply getting bless or mana drain immunity in any other way will also pretty much completely invalidate this troop and make it completely useless. Anyways, as far as the chest drop table is concerned, we have a Stormheim event week, which means we are restricted specifically to the Stormheim for event keys. We go over here down to our Stormheim category. Let's get some base rarity, get some show all. So, oh yeah, I was just talking about this guy the other day. He's not in drop table though he's actually kind of good. But anyways, as far as things not in drop table, these include the technically discontinued penguin, though it will be back eventually. As well as all 5 of the Frostfire keep troops, or 4, I actually forgot if it's gotten one yet. As well as the tarot card. Didn't I supposed to have a tarot card? Where'd it go? The tarot card of strength, which is only in the Volky drop table, and the giant sentinel, which is only from Underspire. Everything else that you see, and the celestial dragon of the Kamathalis. So those several are not in drop table. The most noteworthy one of which is actually giant sentinel. He has curse freeze when enemies take skull on him, and I haven't actually seen what this interaction is, but this is basically like Bone Dragon, but better. Because Bone Dragon has freeze when you get skull poked, but this has curse freeze. So if they take extra turn on you, not only will they get frozen, but the curse will override pretty much all the immunities. So they'll just simply lose their turn. And oddly enough, probably among one of the better tanks in the entire game. Unfortunately, you got to go through the RNG lottery that is Underspire in the current state of the game. But eventually. But anyways, those are all the things not in drop table. As far as what it is, not really anything too enticing. Under the Mythic category, yes, but normally you just diamond target this. But yeah, Mistralis. Mistralis, insanely good, 4 times enchant. We're actually getting a new Mythic of her coloration. I might as well go over it now since we're kind of talking about her. But this weekend, I don't have a thing open. There it is. This weekend, we're getting a troop that is the same coloration as her and might find its way into some alternative teams. Of course, her main premise is that she has extra turn into some damage into enchant. And this thing follows a somewhat similar premise under the exact same coloration of blue, brown, and yellow. And this Mythic will be coming out this Friday, so you'll be able to go Glory Gem Guild and VIP chest for it for that week, as well as all weekend. Anyways, it converts, though not yet, not until Friday, but it converts all gems of a chosen color into good gargoyle gems, which are basically block gems that when destroyed will end up giving you a random positive status effect, though keep in mind the enemy can also take them to gain random status effect. One other thing to note about these is he is going to be creating quite a few of these, but these do not count as mana. So if you do go and destroy them, let's say you converted 10, and then you go destroy all 10 of them, that's 10 less mana that you're getting onto your mana accumulation, as every single one of them counts as no mana at all. He deals magic times 1.5 plus 4 damage to all enemies of that mana color. So if we end up targeting, let's say, red, it'll do that much damage to all red. This is going to be a little bit clunky to use, but is a pretty sizable amount of damage. Obviously benefits a lot if the entire enemy team is of a pure color. And the main relevant thing about this, gain an extra turn. So it does have auto extra turn similar to what Mistralis has there. He has some pretty good skill reduction, some mana drain immunity, and his final trait is a little clunky, and the main reason I feel like you're still going to use Mistralis over him a lot of times. He explodes a good gargoyle gem when his turn begins. The problem with this is you're going to be converting into a bunch of good gargoyle gems on your turn and automatically getting extra turn. Generally, if you're casting this, you already have a way to immediately destroy every single gargoyle gem on the board. Which means if you do end up doing that and successfully get, let's say, all 10 of those, you get all of your mana, you get all 10 of those good gargoyle gems triggered, and now you did a couple other things and you ended your turn. But there are now 0 good gargoyle gems on the board. And then the enemy will end their turn, and then your turn will start. And he'll try to explode a good gargoyle gem, but there's no good gargoyle gems left. So this could be okay if like the enemy is constantly creating good gargoyle gems, but a lot of times with the setups that you're going to be using to properly utilize his ability, it'll basically be canceling out his final trait, which is just really weird design-wise, how that's going to end up working. As a lot of times you're going to get no value from his trait if you're getting full value from his ability, which is just a weird combination because you basically need to get like partial value from his ability in order to get full value or even any value at all from your final trait. So, well, it'll be interesting to see how that ends up working out, but I feel like you're going to be using Mistralis more often than not over that troop, just because it's a lot simpler to use, a lot more consistent to use, and even comes with a free jumbo board, so you're still getting some kind of board-related mechanic as well. Does have a 1 higher mana cost, but overall I would still say Mistralis is going to be superior to that new Mythic, but a nice, interesting alternative strategy, if nothing else. But anyways, that's pretty much the main thing you're looking for. That and stuff to help you out this week. One of the most noteworthy ones being the Legend of Hyndla. Ends up giving a bunch of extra magic to all giants every single time you take an extra turn. Life 2, but of course the relevant one is magic there. This can be pretty helpful for just bolstering up the magic of any giant team. And give you some of the restrictions this week, it'll give you a little bit of extra damage. Aside from that, nothing really too enticing. Baldur, I guess, if you're running like giant restriction or something in PvP. And that's about it. Oh yeah, also, sorry, one other thing that's not a drop table. Gosh, how many things are not a drop table? The current Journey troop, the Janis Visa, is also not in drop table. With that being said, the way that you do get them, of course, is through the current guild event. We have a journey, and as we just mentioned earlier, it is now 40,000 points easier to get all the way to stage 16, as well as slightly easier to get to stage 12. So, yeah, if you're trying to go for all rewards, definitely advise doing so. Has a lot as per usual, and is slightly easier, though do keep in mind the difficulty of the actual battles are unchanged. But yeah, same strategy as per usual. Do whatever the restriction is, build as strong as you could possibly get out there. In this case, obviously, every single one of your team, you're 100% going to want to use the Jarnavissa. Not only does it give up to 3 times as many points, but also be your main mana accumulation in most team compositions that you end up forming, as he ends up creating a ton of blue mana, and then you just kind of go from there. He'll end up creating 10 if you don't have him shiny level 2, or 11 if you do get him that far. You don't really need to get on that far. There's plenty of other alternatives like hero weapons and the such that can offset your mana. It always depends how you want to go about it. But your entire team will be built around that, likely with a pure giant team or mostly pure giant team if you decide to make your hero something that isn't giant. However, your hero does have 20% extra stats this week, so is worth considering if you use the Titan hero class. 10% Stormheim, 10% Giant, which not only includes most of the kingdom for 20%, but also includes the hero class of Titan for that full 20% extra. As far as other things that we have going on this week, obviously we have the May event, as we went over earlier, for the next 2 weeks, not just this week. Tuesday, we have ourselves the Frostfire Keep, which is blue-yellow restriction. Comes with a pretty good legend, too, though you can go for that at any point. As well as a really good rare, which I think I use on one of the Low Rarity teams because it's so accessible. Though it doesn't have to be a Frostfire event week to do that. Wednesday, we have ourselves the Giant Pet. Thursday, we have ourselves Titan Hero class, still among one of the better hero class in the game, though has fallen off a little bit, but still has its use cases here and there, particularly this week with 20% extra stats. And this Friday, we're going to be getting a... I mentioned a new Mythic. I actually forgot what the other thing was. Wait, it's not Bounty Hunter. We just had one. Wait, what was the other event? Hold up. Well, let's go check the handy calendar. Oh, no wonder why I forgot. We have no event this weekend. Ah, I see. Never mind. Yeah, no event this weekend, as you can see here. All right, never mind. That's why I forgot. False alarm. Thought we actually had something this weekend. Never mind. All right. They really need to go buff Arena event. That's kind of funny. I didn't even check Soulforge yet. Jotnar Storm Shield's an event key and in Soulforge. I always find it funny when they double up. Obviously, this guy's pretty useless. He's a really weak barrier option. If you want to run something like this, just run the Dawnbringer hero weapon. It's the same color and vastly superior to this thing. As far as Soulforge is concerned, Lord of Slaughter, probably the main pickup you want to pick up. Really good, just overall skull spammer. On top of all the value that he gets from his skull spam, he even gets a free 1 to 2 death marks, which is nice. And the most relevant thing about him, on top of how good his abilities already is he's still the only troop in the entire game at the current moment in time that has a 100% chance to ignore armor when taking skull damage. So if you have this guy in first or second slot, or if he's currently your first slot, he will end up hitting 100% of the time to their true damage value or to their HP value. So if he ends up hitting 200 to their HP value, you could just completely skip their armor, of course, and similar shenanigans. This used to be on a lot of troops back in the day. However, as it currently stands, he is exclusively the only owner of the 100% true damage, making him just a really good skull spammer and skull dealer. There are generally better ways of doing this, though, because this is effectively, in a lot of situations, only 2 times skull damage when you compare it to things that could do triple and similar. He doesn't stack up as well against those, but still, double damage, pretty nice effectively, especially on lower HP targets that have high armor. And I guess Arc Proxy is worth mentioning. Kind of in a similar camp as him, as just a super skull spammer, while still having some unique things. She's mainly the Uber Doom Skull spammer, which we don't have too many of in the game. It converts all yellow skulls to Uber Doom Skulls, which are basically like normal Doom Skulls, but they explode a 5x5 without the corners, while also doing 10 extra damage instead of 5. And she also curses webs and poisons the strongest enemy. And on top of that, she has a Uber Doom Storm, which can end up creating even more Uber Doom Skulls. And I believe that is it as far as Mythics are concerned. As far as weapons, I wouldn't say there's anything too good to go out of your way for this time around, unless you're just picking up something for the current event week. For example, this mace is based on giant allies. But you can't use this mace during the event. I almost forgot. This is the reason I didn't do it on any of the teams. It's a blue giant restriction, and this is, of course, not blue. So, unfortunately, despite that mace being really good for the giant event, you can still do it for other giant-related things this week, but you cannot use it for the current journey event, due to it not being a blue coloration. But there's a lot of like utility things you can use for other things. I think I use this for Underspire, for example, the brown-red giant one, the explodey weapon. Good just all-around mana accumulator. You don't use it too often, but pretty useful this week, so it's mostly just a pickup weapon based on game mode kind of week if you need anything to assist. Anyways, let's go now into all of the teams, and we have quite a few of them. Since we have... did I even mention the journey event thing? Oh, we kind of touched on it, but did not actually really go over it. So, of course, we have the May event. This will be going on for the next 2 weeks. You end up having to use green allies here. And as far as rewards are concerned, they're pretty much the same setup that we have been getting for all these. With the 2 new things being the Unga. This troop gives a bunch of life and attack to an ally, and boosted by faerie fire gems. And then destroys 2 random rows and columns. And on top of that, there's a 30% chance to create 3 faerie fire gems when its turn begins. I actually kind of like this, in the sense that it creates so many of them when it does it. We already have this mechanic with like freeze gems and a few other things where they create like 2 or something similar. But I really like if they're going to give something a lower percent chance that it actually has like a big impact when it occurs. Like imagine something that had a 10% chance, but it created like 8 gems when it triggered or something, or even 10 or something like absurdly high. So while this is pretty infrequent, when it does end up doing it, 3 faerie fire gems, if you take all 3 of those, that is enough to nearly faerie fire the entire enemy team. So while this probably won't replace out Queen of Tanya as a faerie fire option, it still stands as a really solid option to end up utilizing for it. Its ability, I feel like, is going to be a bit more situational. Really depends exactly how destroy 2 columns randomly works. Because it says 2 random rows and columns. But does this mean it does 2 rows and 2 columns? Or it could do a mix of both, like 1 row, 1 column, 2 rows, 2 columns. I'm not quite sure because I don't have it yet. Probably going to wait until a few days so we can get it naturally. Some people probably already have it, but I don't have it yet. So I'm not sure exactly if that's 2 rows and 2 columns, because that's what it says. Or does it mean a mix of 2 rows and columns? But based on its wording, that should be 4 destroys. 2 columns and 2 rows. So, oh no, we'll just have to wait and see. But if it is 2 and 2, that's actually would explain why she has 20 mana cost, as that's actually a pretty substantial amount of mana accumulation. Ability itself isn't really doing too much, but I could see her being used. It's just a weird combination, because her main ability is increasing your attack, as well as HP, but mostly your attack, obviously. But it has faerie fire gems, which of course amplifies how much spell damage you do by 50%. So this is a weird mix of something that is increasing your skull output with skulls and everything, or your damage output in that regard, and then is also doing it for spell casting. So it's just a weird mix that it doesn't double in on one. Like this wasn't like life and magic or something similar. Obviously maybe not that much magic, but you know, some amount of magic. As that would synergize way better than with the premise of faerie fire gems. Which is a bit of a weird combination overall, but it's not horrible. I just feel like it's very niche and won't find its way into many teams. But yeah, that, and we have the pet for it. This will give +5 to all stats. If you're looking to claim all rewards, you will need to spend 50 gems per day and a 100 on one of the days, as in a total of 150 on one of the days. And this will get you enough points to end up getting 1 spring armor if you don't already have it, 1 copy of the new legendary troop, 6 copies of the pet, which will be 5 of this, and then 1 additional time to get the golden version for 700 total, as the golden version costs 200, and then 1 orb of power. Of course, if you already have the armor, you can spend a little bit less, and if you want to skip the power orb as well and just go for the main 2, that would also end up working out. Keep in mind, highest priority is probably the pet, as none of the golden pets have ever really returned to the game as of currently. I think you might be able to get them sometimes on like those money offer thingies, but as far as like naturally having an event or anything like that, none of the golden pets have ever returned from these events, so it is high priority to go for the pet as your main priority there. Second priority probably being armor if you want it for the cosmetic, though these do seem to come back every single year, though we don't know if that's going to keep happening, but as it currently stands, it seems like that's pretty consistent. And of course, even though this troop is nice to have it a little bit early, you will be able to get this very easily in several weeks after the event, simply in the Glory Gem Guild and VIP chest drop table down the line, as you would with any legendary. So it will be pretty easy to get down the line if you don't really want to use her immediately, or necessarily want her for Forest of Thorns upgrades. Anyways, let's go now into all of the teams, all of which are in the description below if you want to go and copy paste any of them. So, right off the bat, we're going with a giant team. Of course, we are restricted to use giants, so you are allowed to use any hero class. And aside from that, you also have to use blue, which does limit you a little bit. We can't use the explodey giant weapon, limits a little bit of the somewhat better giants that we can end up using too, as some of them do reside off of the blue color. But for this first one, obviously we have to use this guy to go get over our blue mana. We're actually using it as our sole mana accumulator here. I was considering adding a second one, and probably still will. We end up having Dawnbringer here just for some chip damage. Hyndla's main premise, and it does stack, is of course that you gain magic every single time you take an extra turn to all giants. And given that our entire team has to be all giants, it's going to be a lot of magic for every single time. So this guy just keeps looping, getting his extra turns every single time you get a single extra turn from that. We'll end up getting 4 magic across your entire team, and that stacks up to be quite a bit of additional damage. You can scale pretty quickly with it. For the journey low event, we ended up going with Forest Troll for tank. Keep in mind, you should never actually cast as Forest Troll. He's here simply because he's the tankiest option you'll have under the lower rarity options. Not only does he entangle on Skull, but also has 33% score reduction. While there are some things that have 50% score reduction, the entangle ends up making up for way more than what the 33 or 50% reduction difference will end up being. So the entangle ends up winning out. You don't actually ever need to cast his ability because he just doubles green, and you mostly want blue on the board. So we're using, of course, this guy because we have to, and to create all of our blues that we need. We're using a backup mana accumulator. Keep in mind, you do not have to use Aberral Crystal. However, if you do happen to have this, it works out a little bit better. Use any explodey weapon that has a resummon on it. But if you do have access to Aberral Crystal, this is really good because it gives a random status effect to all Elemental. And one pretty noteworthy thing about Elementals is there's a lot of giants underneath Elemental. So much so that this team is actually pure elemental and pure giant. As we can see here, this is elemental, this is elemental. Hero would be, it's just giant, but obviously there's no dual typing hero. And then we have this guy who is also elemental giant. So every single thing on this team is a giant, with everything but hero being elemental, just because there's no dual typing hero, as it's impossible to have both 4 times giant and 4 times elemental, as it's physically impossible to have hero cover both. But yeah, a lot of extra stats you end up getting because of that, as well as just a lot of extra random stats effects when you end up casting the Aberro Crystal. Even if you don't have it, not too big a deal. The only difference if you don't have Aberro Crystal is you won't get as many giant resummons, and of course you won't get a random stats effects across all your elementals, which composes your entire team. Next we have ourselves the faction event for Frostfire Keep that will be taking place tomorrow. This is a blue-yellow restriction. As far as teams, went with a pretty standard Rowan team, just using a bit of an alternative mana accumulation here. For the higher rarity team, we ended up going down the Bork mech route. Bork in order to go get a bunch of destroys early on, one for all the clans and curse if we need, and then High King Iron get Catheric, so you can also run High King Iron get Zolgoth, whatever you want to run there for the double insta-kill. Always depends on preference. Next, we have the nice diverse team for the Pure faction, which is 4 Frostfire Wraiths. If you're early on in the game and you need something to use this week for any kind of game mode, this thing is pretty good overall. He is the cheapest thing you can get in the entire game that has 65% score reduction. On top of that, he even has life gain to go on top of it. He has a life steal, which means not only do you do true damage to the enemy, which is already pretty good, but you also end up getting all that life back. So if you hit something like a 40, you will get 40 life back, which is pretty solid. But he's also only a rare from a faction, meaning you can always target him, and he's absurdly easy to get. So much so, let me actually go get him real quick. I will go to Underspire, and I will get him within literal seconds, or sorry, Underworld. So Frostfire Keep is located over here. I'll go open 10 of these, so you probably can get him in even less than that. Though I'm just doing 10 to go quicker here. And... oh gosh, we actually didn't get it. We got too lucky. No. wait, ignore that. Okay, we're going to get him within 20. There he is. There, we got 4 of them. Wow, what are we getting so lucky on Sacred Treasure all of a sudden? That's actually pretty rare. But, yeah, there we go. We got 4 within 20, which is like 1 in 5. Actually, the exact rate is over here, which is, I'm looking at the wrong thing. Yep, that makes sense. Is he's a 23% chance. So 1 in 5. We got a little bit under drop rate, but still pretty much on drop rate. So you can expect to get him 1 every 5 portals that you open there. So really good overall tank. Obviously, if you want multiple, you need to go and get more than 1. However, there is a team we're about to show that does use only 1. But that's the Pure faction team. Just spam him, and you'll be good to go. Where do we go? Not Titan class. We're not there yet. Actually, we're about to be. One step ahead of myself. Anyways, that's that team. So, Titan class. So, we're just using Frostmage with Dawnbringer. If you don't have Dawnbringer, just use any yellow weapon, as we're just feeding a bunch of yellow link into it. So, we're just doing the AoE spam is pretty much every Thursday class event. Just not really need to go any fancy for it. Just do your basic battles, go clear through it 4 times. And, you know, the first 4 sets, and you get yourself 25 free gems and some class XP if you don't already have Titan class max. Though it is pretty good to end up getting max. Has 50% mana start. Actually, I'm on the wrong class here, but has 50% mana start to all Titans, or all Giants on your team. It has a few other utilities. It's still one of the more versatile hero classes in the game. Be able to run for mana accumulation, skulls, and casting, depending on how you want to do it. I think I currently have mine set to skull oriented right now, but you can set it to mana oriented and go down that route as well and make it more of a caster oriented class. Anyways, next we have ourselves the Underspire. Underspire this week is restricted specifically to that of Stormheim, so you're allowed to use any Stormheim troops in the game. With that being said, the strongest option by far, by a mile, is to use the Celestial Dragon of the Comathalis. He hits absurdly hard, especially ever since they end up buffing up its amount of damage, and has a lot of reduction both for skull and for spell, as well as giving a bunch of blue allies a little bit of extra stats. On top of that, we're just using the Stormheim weapon, which is available in Soulforge this week. This was not one of the ones I mentioned, but is one of the ones you can go get this week from the Soulforge. And it just creates a bunch of blue and yellow, which feeds into most of the better options that you have within this kingdom. Unfortunately, it does not feed any back into itself. We're using an Urska Wander here. We actually, I believe, double up on this on the cheaper team. Unfortunately, he doesn't have a 1-to-1 ratio. That would be really nice, but he has a 2-to-1 based on enemies' attack, making him one of the only few things that really scale properly within this faction. For the most part, you're not really casting him too often. I mostly put him on this team because he covers every color that we don't currently have, and there wasn't really anything too enticing on the other colors. But this can be your entire damage source if you really want to. Let's say they have something like 200 attack value when you get deeper in. That's 100 extra damage on top of whatever you're doing for your base damage. So that's not too bad. Obviously, that's still going to take forever if they have something like 400 durability and you're doing like 100 something damage at a time. But, you know, it's still, actually take it, it'd be closer to like 140, but, you know, it's still skills. So it can be one of your alternatives for damage if you're just lacking every other damage source possible that is available from this kingdom. And speaking of which, Mistralis, we were going over earlier, really good just all-around troop. Has enchant for your entire team, making her a really good enchanter. Has an auto extra turn ability that can hit pretty decent damage, especially if you get lucky on it, as it can hit up to 4 times for very big damage. And since it has auto extra turn, you get a free jumble on the board, which allows you to reset the board and just kind of get some better matches. And that's pretty much a rundown there. As far as the low rarity team, as I mentioned, we go pretty much all in on the 2 low rarity things we were kind of already mentioning. The Frostfire Wraith, which you end up getting from the Frostfire Keep at a really low rarity. Open that about 5 times, you'll get a copy of him. He's the most accessible 65% reduction in the entire game for newer players, while also having that life steal, which gives you even more life. And on top of that, we're actually doing this with Elementals instead of Titan or something similar. This is mostly because it's tankier, but also because if you have a fully traded Elementals, it stun, freeze, burns, and entangles, with the main 2 being freeze and burn. This is relevant because this guy has a boost ratio that, while in the context of the faction doesn't really get used, he does use it very well with Elementalist hero class. So he has a boost ratio for 2 for every single frozen and burning enemy, and if they have both, that is 4, which means he will hit for 16 additional damage and life gain every single time you cast him if the entire enemy team is frozen and burning, which sounds like a lot, but with Elementalist doing it every single extra turn is not as hard as it may seem. And you just keep spamming this weapon, you keep getting resummoned. If this thing happens to ever die, it likely won't, but once you get to the later fights, it probably will if you have lower stats. But you can just keep getting random giants there, and hopefully that'll be enough to tank and win. And now we're just using the Urska Wanderers as our pokes. He will be a little bit slow. It'll be pretty similar to trying to use Tagraki last week. It's going to be very similar in that regard, though I think Tagraki would have been even a little bit better because he just true damage, whereas this is physical. But it's going to be similar if you had to resort to just Tagraki only, and will be even slightly slower than that. So not ideal. If you can get your hands on a better damage source, it is definitely advised to do so. But you don't need to have like the Cosmic Dragon or something to end up making it work. While it is nice to have Cosmic Dragon and or Mistralis, it's definitely not required to end up completing out the Underspire this week. Anyways, lastly, we have ourselves green teams. This you could pretty much run, I would say, whatever you would normally run for Guild War, but Guild War doesn't really occur much these days, or ever. It's been like a good 5 months, but anyways. We're using a pretty standard setup for green, Bog Strider, Leprechaun. Leprechaun, of course, Mass Explode with Empower right off the bat, even has some green link. Bog Strider, basically just Thrall, but for green. He also has a similar tankiness that that Forest Troll has that we used on that one team. He has 33% score reduction while also being able to entangle on Skull, making him surprisingly tanky in the first slot. And on top of that, we're just using whatever our best AoE option is. Obviously, if you don't have Stellaryx, replace out Stellaryx for Diamantina. If you don't have Diamantina, replace it out for your next best green option that hits all enemies. Basically, just put whatever your strongest green option that hits all enemies here, and you'll be good. And then we're just using Wand for our mana accumulation. We can also use Curse and stuff if they happen to get submerged or any other weird mechanic that can bypass our full AoE damage. But yeah, worst comes to worst, you could even run like Beatrix here, Truffle, anything like that. There's a lot of really accessible options. I just went with Stellaryx because we can, but obviously downgrade accordingly based on what you have. Speaking of running Beatrix, run Beatrix. We're doing a Bog Strider Leprechaun Beatrix team. Same premise as the previous one with Bog Strider Leprechaun. We're just using Beatrix as our low rarity option. While she is a legendary, she's a faction legendary, so you can always target it. Similar to how we just were opening portals for the other faction for Frostfire Keep. You can do the same thing for Deep Hive and get the legendary of the Queen Beatrix pretty consistently. You can also double up on Queen Beatrix or put a Truffle or anything else you want to do there. Actually, I want to farce Gremlin here instead of Hero. Well, you can run Archer Hero class with Greenstorm and everything. I actually went down this route because it actually also has Greenstorm while having a extra green mana. And you even have a way to place Faerie Gem if you really want to. You're not really using it for its damage though, mostly for the 2 traits that it has into a Faerie Gem. Figured I'd do this, but obviously if you wanted to do double Beatrix, perfectly fine. Whatever else you want to put there, if you have a better damage source, if you want to put Hero with Wand, whatever you have, just put there. But that's pretty much the range of like most expensive you can go with that premise and least expensive that you can go with that premise, which is kind of how I wanted to build it for this. So obviously upgrade accordingly based on what you have and just replace things out as you need to get the 2-week-long May event done. But anyways, guys, I believe that is absolutely everything. If you still have any other questions, feel free to leave it in the comment section below. Definitely feel free to leave a like on the video. Helps a lot and is greatly appreciated. I hope you all have a wonderful, wonderful week. Goodbye, everyone, and thanks for watching.